Chapter 8. "Hello," someone said, and I looked up. Nerd on a bike. He'd caught me. My face must have looked funny thinking about Ben because the boy's face changed. He'd looked as if he was going to say something to me, like he'd had all the words ready to go, and then he said something else instead. "You live on my street," he said. He had dark hair and freckles. I expected his eyes to be brown, but they were hazel. "In the Wainwrights' old house." "Yeah," I said. "I was going to ask you why you were following me." "I wanted to see where you were going dressed like that," I told him. "I should have realized the festival. Do you work here?" "Yeah." "How old are you?" 12. "So I could work too." The thought seemed to come out of nowhere. I didn't know I wanted a job. I didn't know what I wanted, except to go back to how things used to be, and that could never happen. But I wanted it so bad that it didn't leave room to want much else. "Are they hiring?" I asked. "We can find out," he said. "What's your name?" "Cedar Lee," I said. "That sounds like a movie star name." I almost said it's not. It's a tree name because my dad grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and there was this huge old cedar tree in his yard, and for some reason he thought that would be a great name for his first kid, boy or girl, and Mom liked it too. And he always joked that's how he knew he'd found the right person. They fought sometimes, but they were super in love. My parents. You could tell that in a lot of ways. They were the same height. My dad was short and my mom was tall. And whenever they dressed up and went out, he never cared at all whether she wore heels or not, whether she was taller than he was or not, even though that was one of those things people seem to think that they should care about. Without her heels, they could stand together, and they were exactly the same height, nose to nose, eye to eye. "I am a movie star." I didn't know why I said that, when it was so obviously not true, but he grinned. When he did, his eyebrows went up in a very dramatic way, like a cartoon devil. "A movie star," he said. "Like Lisette Chamberlain?" I knew right away who he meant. Lisette Chamberlain was the most famous person the town of Iron Creek had ever produced. She got her start at the Summerlost festival and went on to star in soap operas and movies, and then later died under mysterious and dramatic circumstances. "What's your name?" I asked. "Leo Bishop," he said. "That's a good name too." "I know," he said. "Come on, let's go for a walk." Let's go to talk to my boss. Chapter 9. We parked our bikes out in front of the box office building. In the rack closest to the fountain, it had a pool with a geyser-like spray that went straight up, and then the water ran down like a waterfall over a pie-shaped wedge of concrete jutting out over another lower pool. When we were kids, we climbed back behind the waterfall even though we knew we could get in trouble for it. Leo took me around to the concession building, which was half timbered and pretend old-looking like the theater. Once we were inside, Leo introduced me to his boss, Gary, and told him that I wanted a job. "The season has already started," Gary said. "But we could use a few more people," Leo said, "especially since Annie quit last week." "Have you worked anywhere before?" Gary asked me. "No," I said, "but I babysit a lot, and I have good grades at school. I'm very responsible." A couple of girls about my age stood watching me. I felt dumb. Gary looked at my feet and said, "No flip-flops, never again. Can you get some sandals by tonight?" "Sure," I said. I had a pair of leather sandals at home that looked like the ones some of the other girls were wearing. People milled around the room, all wearing peasant costumes. I saw some older people, too, around my grandma's age. They were the volunteer ushers who gave directions and instructions and helped people find their seats in the theater. "You can train today and tonight," Gary said, "and then start tomorrow. Your mom will need to sign this because you're not 16. Bring it back with you tonight." He handed me a form and I nodded. I wondered what my mom would say. Would she agree to this? What was I thinking? "You work from 1 to 3 in the afternoon and from 6 to 8:30 at night," Gary said. "Every day but Sunday. You're here to sell concessions before the matinees and evening performances start, and during the green show. Then you come back and help clean up afterward. Payday is every other Friday." "Okay," I said. "Lindy," he said to one of the older ladies, "can you go to the costume shop and ask Meg if we have anything that will fit?" Lindy nodded and left. "I'll have you shadow Leo today," Gary said. "He'll show you what to do. Do you have any questions?" "I guess I have one," I said. "What do I concess?" Behind Gary, I saw Leo grin again. "We'll assign you something later," Gary said. "For now, learn from Leo." A few minutes later, Lindy came back with a peasant skirt and blouse. The blouse was white with ties at the neck. The skirt had flowers on it. They both looked big. "It's the smallest one they had," Lindy told me. I ducked into the employee bathroom to get dressed, and I pulled out my ponytail because I'd noticed the other girls all had their hair down. I left my shorts on under the skirt, but I balled up my t-shirt and I put it on a chair in the bathroom, hoping no one would take it. That looks all right, Gary said when I came out. Gary and Leo showed me all the things they sold out on the yard, as Gary called it. I'd seen some before when I'd been to the festival. Fresh tarts, raspberry, lemon, and cream cheese. They looked like tiny folded up purses. I wanted to eat one. Bottled water with the words Summerlost Festival and the logo. The theater printed on the labels. Old-fashioned candy in cellophane wrap packages. Lemon drops, horehound candy, and taffy and wax paper twists. Chocolates and programs. Fancy printed up programs. Leo took a basket of those, and so I did too. Gary had lots of final instructions. Remember, he said, no flip-flops tonight. I understand, I said. Take care of your costume. Delicate wash only. You don't want Meg from the costume shop mad at you. Trust me. All right. Don't forget that you're in England, he told me. In the time of Shakespeare. I nodded. I didn't point out that I'm part Chinese-American, and so the odds that I would have been in England back in Shakespeare's time were highly unlikely. And, Gary said, you're a peasant. That part felt kind of true thanks to the outfit. Stay in character, he said, but don't use an accent unless you're given specific permission. The only kid here who has permission to use an accent is Leo. Okay, I followed Leo toward the door. Where are you? Gary called after me. For a minute I didn't get it, but then I did. I'm in England, I told him. Chapter 10. I've actually been to England, Leo said. That's why I can do the accent, because I've heard it in real life. Let's hear it, I said. Oh, you will, soon. We walked across a brick courtyard with a big tree in the middle. A wooden bench was built all the way around the tree. It was not as busy for the matinees, Leo said. He had a lively voice and talked fast, but not as fast that I couldn't keep up. People don't wander around much when it's hot. They stay in the gift shop and buy their stuff there, or go straight to the theater. The nighttime shows are the big ones, as far as we're concerned. That's when the real work gets done. That's when I break records. What kind of records? All kind of records, Leo said. Most programs sold in an hour, most programs sold in a night, most programs sold in a week. Gary keeps track of all of it. I'm gunning for most programs sold in a single season, and I'm a lock for that if I keep up the way I'm going. But what I'm most proud of is that one night I outsold everyone in concessions. Do you know how much harder it is to sell programs than water? We're in the desert, but I did it. One awesome night 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to do it again. It seemed like Leo had more energy than anyone I'd ever met. So, he said, why did you want the job? What are you saving up for? And don't say college or a car. Why not? That's what everyone says. What's wrong with wanting to go to college or get a car? I didn't think far enough ahead for either, but something about Leo made me want to play devil's advocate. It's fine, Leo said, if you're specific. Like, Jackie, one of the girls, says college, but she says UC San Diego to study marine biology. That's fine. And if you know exactly the type of car you want to get, also fine. But vague stuff, it's stupid. Well then, I'm stupid, I said, because I don't know. Leo frowned. You can't think of anything you want? I did not answer the question because right then an older lady walked by, and that's when it happened. The accent. Leo smiled and, sounding like Oliver Twist or who knows what, called out, "Can I interest you in a program, my lady?" I didn't know if the accent was right. I didn't know if it was real England or kid in a movie England. What I did see was that Leo's face lit up, and then the lady's face lit up, and his smile seemed as big as the world, like he loved the world, like he had no idea what it could do. She bought 3 programs while Leo joked with her in his maybe real English accent, and I stood watching. Impressed? Leo asked me when she'd gone away. Very, I said, but I made it sound sarcastic. Let's hear you try, he said. Next time, your turn, with an accent. But Gary said, I won't tell Gary, Leo said. Come on. The next person we saw was a man, an old man with a neatly pressed white shirt and a bottle of water in his hand. He had a nice face and big glasses, and he walked fast. Sir, I said, and then, when he didn't hear me, I said it louder, Sir, could I interest you in a program? I did not know what was coming out of my mouth, accent-wise. Maybe I was German or Italian or Irish, Australian. He stopped and looked at me, and I held out a program. I don't think so, he said pleasantly enough, and then he turned around to see Leo shaking with laughter. What was that? Leo asked. I'm surprised you didn't recognize it, I said. It's from a little-known part of England, a very small province. Did they even have provinces in England? I wasn't sure. I knew they didn't have states. Really? Leo said. And what's the name of this province? It's Bludge, I said in my terrible accent, saying the first even sort of British word that came to mind. Oh yeah? Leo asked. And what's the capital city of the province of Bludge? Did provinces have capitals? Bludgeon, I said. That made Leo laugh so hard that he almost missed the lady with 2 teenagers walking past. But then he switched right into the accent, and she bought a program and smiled at him. We were walking back along the sidewalk when some boys on bikes came through. An usher waved at them to stop, but they didn't. They're not supposed to cut through here during festival hours, Leo said, but they do it anyway because it's faster. When the boys came closer, I could see that they were about our age. Spiky blonde hair on one, baseball hats on all the rest. Tall socks, shiny shirts made out of fabric that looked like plastic. Coming home from some sports practice maybe, they were going so fast that I worried they'd slam right into us, so I followed Leo's lead and stepped over onto the grass. As they came by, one of them knocked Leo's hat off his head and they all laughed. That's new, Leo said. He reached down to pick up his hat. Usually they just yell stuff at me when they come by. I could tell he was trying to sound like he didn't care. It was almost working. They think they're so wild, but they're kids on bikes. It's not like they're Hell's Angels or something. They're like Hell's Farts, I said, and that cracked Leo up hard enough that I could see the braces on his back teeth. I smiled too. That's perfect, he said. They're Hell's Farts. We walked past the Summerlost Theater with its flags waving merrily and its dark painted wood and white stucco. The wooden stairs outside were worn smooth-grooved with decades of people coming to get lost in lives that were not their own. Did you hear? Leo asked when he saw me looking. The theater's coming down at the end of the summer. What? I said, stunned. Did my mother know? She thought of the theater as part of the town, her childhood. They're remodeling some of the other buildings, but the theater's too much hassle, so they're starting over. They're tearing it down and building a new one across the street, Leo said. Haven't you noticed? I guess I haven't been over there yet. I'll show you after our shift, Leo said. Chapter 11. We rode our bikes over to the east on our way home. An entire block was missing. There it is, Leo said. They're building the new theater here. It's going to be part of Iron Creek's new civic center. I knew it had been there before, a bunch of small old houses, some of them beautiful, and a doctor's office where I'd been once for strep throat over Christmas break. My Uncle Nick ran the pharmacy, and so if we ever got sick while we were in Iron Creek, he'd flavor the antibiotics and also put a treat from the candy counter in the bag with our medicine. Now, instead of the houses and the doctor's office, there was a chain-link fence and construction equipment and workers and some blue porta-potties lined up in a row. And most of all, there was the hole. It was huge. It would have been a lot of work before they dug the hole. They would have had to tear everything down, remove all the splintered boards, tear up the lawns, break up the fences, take away the glass, pull up the foundations, and then dig and dig. Where did it all go, I wondered? Everything that used to be here. But if they tear the theater down, I said, the Summerlost Festival logo won't make sense. It's a picture of the theater, and the logo is all over the place. On the bottles, the programs, the signs. I bet they'll keep the logo the same, Leo said, even if the theater's gone. It's an icon, I said. I guess it was around for so long that it doesn't actually have to be here anymore to have meaning for people. It's sad, I said to Leo. I know. Neither of us used our accents, so I knew we both meant it. Chapter 12. It turned out that my mother knew about the theater coming down. She just hadn't mentioned it to us. I told her about the hole in the porta-potties, and then about the job. I told her that there was a neighborhood kid I could ride to and from the festival with, so it would be safe and she wouldn't even have to worry about that or about dropping me off or picking me up. I hadn't actually run any of that past Leo, but I'd ask him as soon as I got to work for the evening shift. Maybe next year, she said. 12 is young to have a job. I'm the same age as the other kids, I said, and this is the last year that they'll have the old theater. Next year it won't be the same. She thought for a minute and then nodded. All right. Chapter 13. That night I rode my bike over to the festival. I didn't forget my sandals. I was in England. I'd thought Gary was dumb for saying that, but toward the end of the shift it actually felt like we were. On the green show stage, performers danced and sang and hit tambourines that had green and purple ribbons tied to them. The women had garlands in their hair, the crowd clapping along. Leo used his accent, and the lights twinkled everywhere, and my skirt swished around my ankles. The tart smelled delicious. There were a million stars, and people and music were laughing and laughing. Flags waved in the air. The trees were old, the way they were at my house, and I didn't mind so much when the wind came through and they started talking. Maybe it didn't feel like in England. I'd never been, but it felt different, good. At the end of the shift, a trumpet sounded to tell people it was time to go into the play, and the spell was broken. After we counted out the money, I sold 15 programs. Leo sold 56. I asked him if we could ride our bikes home together. My mom worries, I said. We cut through the festival's administration building to get to the bike rack on the other side. They're making a new display over here, Leo said, gesturing to the west wing of the building. It's called the Costume Hall, and it's going to have one costume on display for every year the festival has been operating. They're doing a lot of new things, I said. Yeah, Leo said. The idea is that all the improvements will mean more ticket sales. I think they got the idea for the costume hall from this. He pointed to the wing of the administration building that led off to the east. The portrait hall, I said. Right. Leo walked into the portrait hall, so I followed him. I'd been in the portrait hall before. It had a painting of an actor from a play for each year of the festival. There she is, he said, stopping in front of one of the portraits. I knew without looking at the plaque under the frame who he meant. Lisette Chamberlain. I'd noticed her ever since I was small. Even in the portrait hall, full of beautiful and interesting-looking people wearing fancy costumes, Lisette stood out. Not only was she the most gorgeous actor of all, she wore a jeweled crown in her red hair, and she was looking off camera at someone, and you couldn't tell if she loved or hated the person she saw. All you knew was that she was looking at them significantly. Her dress was deep purple velvet with black brocade, and she was resting her cheek on her hand so that you noticed her beautiful fingers and her slender wrists, and her jewelry, a golden bracelet woven like a chain, a ring with 3 white stones. You know about her, right? Leo asked. Yeah, I said. Go on, Leo said. What do you know? I tried to remember everything my mom and grandparents had told me. Lisette was born here in Iron Creek, and she worked at the festival, first in the Green Show, then she became an actor in the plays. She went to Hollywood and was on a soap opera and then in some movies. But every summer she'd come back and do a one-night performance at Summerlost, which always sold out almost a full year in advance. Then she died here in Iron Creek, in the hotel on Main Street. Right, Leo said. He seemed to be studying me. He folded his arms across his chest and tipped his head to one side. He had long eyelashes for a boy. For anyone. I think I can work with you. That's good, I said, because you are. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? So, one time my family went to Washington, D.C., he said. And when we were there, we went on a lot of tours. That sounds boring, I said. It was awesome. You could do tours that specialize in different famous people and the places they'd lived or worked. I want to do a tour like that about Lisette. It's the 20th anniversary of her death this summer. All the old people who came to the festival when she was alive haven't forgotten her. We could make a ton of money. I didn't know what to say. The anniversary of her death? We had been through the anniversary of my dad and Ben's deaths a few weeks ago, and it was horrible. All day long I couldn't stop thinking about what had been happening at the time the year before when they got in the car when I found out what had happened. Leo reached into the pocket of his peasant's pants and pulled out a piece of paper. Here's a map I've made of possible tour sites, he said, spreading it out. The trick is that we can't drive, so everything has to be in walking distance. I remembered that Leo didn't actually know Lisette. She had been gone for a long time. In this way, at least she would be remembered. It would be horrible if people just forgot you. We're going to wear either our work costumes, he said, or all black. I can't decide. I had the idea for the tour a couple of days ago, so I still haven't worked everything out. Gary won't be happy if he finds out we're wearing our costumes outside of the festival, I said after a second. Was I going to go along with this? I kept talking, like my mouth had decided to go ahead without me. You make a good point, Leo said. Okay, we'll wear all black. He tapped the paper with his finger. As far as the sites go, we have the theater, of course, where she performed. We also have the hospital where she was born and the hotel where she died and the cemetery where she's buried. It's too bad that they tore down the house where she grew up. Wait, I said, the hospital is new? I'm talking about the old hospital. It's still around. That's cool, I said, picturing something old and overgrown with vines. Where is it? 2 streets away, he said. The Everett building. The insurance office? Yup. That's all you've got, I said. 4 sites? Leo wasn't paying attention. What would be great is if we could go through the tunnels. What tunnels? There are tunnels that ran under the administration building and go to the theater, he said, dropping his voice as if he were telling me a secret. I glanced over my shoulder, but the only people around were the ones in the portraits. They built them years ago so the actors could get from the dressing rooms in the basement of the administration building out to the theater without being seen by the people in the courtyards. And there's some old maintenance tunnels, too, that they don't even use anymore. Why would we want to go into the tunnels, I asked. Because Lisette would have gone through them all the time, Leo said. All the actors use them. They have for decades. But when they tear down the theater, they're getting rid of those tunnels too. This is our last chance to see them. People aren't going to let kids into the tunnels. Maybe we can find a way, Leo said. For now, We have the other 4 places, and they're all within walking distance of each other and of our houses. It's perfect. I've done a lot of research about Lisette so I can fill you in, and I've come up with some advertising." He leaned closer. "That's another reason I want to do the programs. I can put these flyers inside without Gary or anyone noticing." He handed me a piece of shiny paper printed with a picture of Lisette Chamberlain. The lettering on the flyer read, "Lisette Chamberlain Tour. Follow in her footsteps and learn about her life. For more information, call 555-1234 between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. $5 per person, cash only." "This is crazy," I said. "We can't stay out late at night," Leo went on, "so we'll have to go early in the morning, like really early, so we don't get caught. And then I'll sit by my phone every morning to make sure no one else answers it. It'll be easy. That's when my parents are at work and my brothers are at practice. I've thought it all through." "I can tell," I said. "So what made you decide that you want a partner?" "Meeting you," he said. Was he flirting? Teasing? Asking me to do this because he felt sorry for me because of what happened to my family? He had to know. Everyone knew. And over the past year, people did nice things for me, mostly out of pity. "I'll split the money with you," Leo said. "We'll meet at my house at 6:45 so we can walk over to Everett Building together. That's where the tour is going to start, where she was born." Lisette stared at me from the flyer and from the portrait on the wall. "What do you think?" "I'll do it," I said. I wasn't sure why, but if I had to guess, I would say it was because I liked talking to Leo. He always seemed to be thinking about something. His brain was very busy. I wanted to go along with him, tag along with his mind like a hitchhiker, so that I could keep my brain busy too. And that's the end of chapter 13, and that's where we're going to stop.